But ultimately, you want a culture where everybody can raise their hand. You want a culture where there's a lot of smart people that are very pragmatic. If they see something that needs to be improved, they feel empowered that they can, take the initiative, and then hopefully there's coordination and communication because you want to be consistent across the different things that you're doing.
Welcome to Insights from the Inside by Mojo. This is Wesley Campbell. So today's guest is Mark Bunnell. Mark has worked in technology for the near entirety of his now illustrious and professional career in everything from marketing to product management, and in fact is now the CEO of Mojo and has been at the helm of the company for the last 13 years. Mark is a particularly exciting guest to have on the show because he's really dared to do something that not a lot of entrepreneurs matching his profile have attempted: to build a software company from the ground up in a major technology hub in Latin America. It comes with its own unique benefits and challenges, but more than anything, it lends him a perspective on where the world is at in terms of technology, specifically related to how large organizations and enterprises are changing the way we experience everything digital. So we discuss global decentralization, building great products from anywhere in the world. We talk about the concept of automation and automated revenue. We talk about concepts of future-proofing and reducing complexity. And then we touch on how all of this affects company culture, teams, individuals, and much more. This was honestly a fascinating discussion that covers a wide range of topics, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it too. So without further ado, I give you Mark Bunnell. Okay, and we're here again for the next episode of Insights from the Inside, and we're with the big guy himself. We're so lucky today. We have Mark Bunnell. He's the CEO of Mojo here, and we're super happy to have him on this episode. And Mark, why don't you just start us out real quick and tell us a little bit about your background, professionally, your kind of outlook, and we're filming this from down here in Chile, and just tell us a little bit about how we got to now. So take it away.
Well, thanks, Wes. It's awesome to be here. Congrats on this initiative. I'm very honored to be considered as a good guest for Mojo.
Absolutely.
So my background is I'm here actually physically with you in Chile because I was a ski racer, and I was able to ski race around the world. And I made it to the Canadian ski team. And by doing that, I was able to spend a lot of time in different countries, get to know lots of different people. And when I left the world of ski racing, I was very fortunate to go to the University of Utah, where I connected with some amazing people in Utah in the middle of the 1990s. So between 1992 and 1998, in those formative years of the internet, my first job was working with some amazing people, some entrepreneurs in the first .com, who taught me a ton about what was to come. And then I left Utah in 1998. I went back to Canada. I did a master's degree at McGill University, and realized when I was at McGill that I had a bit of a edge over some of my classmates because I'd already was already doing stuff with technology, looking at what was to come with the internet, and then just basically spent the next 25 years working in different capacities with technology, and everything from actually getting my hands into some of the underlying ways that things get built to becoming a product manager. And I'd say that most of my experience really, as an entrepreneur, is more on the product side and more on the marketing side. And then all of this fun leadership, happens along the way when, from trial and error. And then after a while, you get smart, and you start to read books, and you try to avoid, stupid mistakes about where you're going.
That's where the wisdom comes in. It's where the wisdom comes in. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's cool is that, we've been successful in building an awesome company because we have very diverse group of people that are now working at Mojo in different countries, each able to contribute to build something that's world class, and that's really fun.
That's great. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah, because you go from I like this. It's interesting that even the experience that you're able to get before you went to go get your master's, how that can really shape your outlook because you realize like, hey, I know a couple things that other people don't, and then you can kind of it's great to be the type of mind that can put things together in a way that, hey, let's go and let's take this next step and move forward, and that's really cool. So I think that one of the reasons why you're so valuable as a guest here is because for a lot of our listeners out there, especially people involved in software and product development, there is a very good chance that we're talking to someone right now that's in the US that maybe is involved in Silicon Valley or another tech hub, possibly Austin, but that everything was very US centric. But that's changing recently. I mean, if we were to talk about this concept of building products, software specifically, building products from anywhere. In the past, anyone who was serious and wanted to start a software company, well, you got to go where it's happening. And where it was happening was Silicon Valley. But now there are major software companies all over the world. So I can think of Atlassian, which is from Australia, SAP, which I believe they're German. There's Micro Focus, which they're from England. And hopefully no one skewers me here on the internet, but I think Skype is originally from Estonia or something like that. I mean, I think they're not US based, but either way, there's a lot of major players that have grown internationally that traditionally was very US based only thing. And so, Austin, speaking of US specifically, Austin is kind of a growing tech hub. And then Texas, we know that in general, Elon Musk has moved all of his fabrication efforts to Texas. So there's this movement, even among celebrities that are like leaving Hollywood and LA. There's this movement where people are realizing they can build great things, whether it's a comedy special for a comedian or in our case, a software product, but you can do it from anywhere now. The internet is just enabled. There's so much leverage to be had through the media of the internet. So how do you think this trend is going and how do you see this impacting the global landscape? In our case, we're specialists in technology and software and product development. How do you think that's going to affect things in the future?
Well, what's so fun is that, I'll start my day right now and I might be talking to these guys in Bangalore. And then I'll move back to Germany where we have one of our guys in the marketing team that you know well that we're working with.
Yeah.
And then I'll move my way up to Colombia where we have a nice team in Colombia. And then I'll talk to some clients that are in Tennessee or in Florida. And so pretty much, what's happened is that first you had the democratization of knowledge, right? So you
Mhm.
had this capacity to learn anywhere. The pandemic has accelerated, this capacity to interact with people remotely and efficiently. But because if you say that knowledge is now very democratic, and then you say to yourself, okay, well, and talent is going to emerge from all these different places on the globe, then what you see is that you're obviously going to get very distributed organizations that are building
Mhm.
value
Mhm.
um, for clients that may be at the other end of the planet. And so today, what's really cool is you see that some great companies are emerging from everywhere. Could be Eastern Europe, could be Latin America, could be India or Australia or Canada. The U.S. is going to be always be a very dominant player commercially, and lots of the global leaders are there, and the market's very important, for what you want to achieve as a software company.
Right.
But you can build great companies, for markets that maybe the Brazilian market is a big market, the Mexican market's a big market, Canada's, and the U.S. are obviously mature markets where there's a lot that can be done. But I think what's going to be fun is that competition is going to come from all parts of the globe because that's what happens when you get lots of talent that are ambitious and that are solving needs that companies may have in different countries. And so in our case, we found a niche that we thought we could penetrate and do a better job than players that were there, and to get momentum and validation for software that's been built by people from different countries. And you and I are a testament at Mojo. Like we're both, let's call ourselves gringos, the American
Okay.
gringo and the
Yeah,
Canadian gringo.
sure.
But if you were to extrapolate the concept of gringo, we've got French people and German people and Spanish, and we've got, partners that are in India and partners that are in Spain and partners that are in Canada and the US. And so ultimately, what's fun is that it's really about how you orchestrate all of these different mix between people and companies and processes, to go after and do something better than the next guy that might be your competition.
Right.
So
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
so it's really it's more about, how well are you orchestrating your capacity to create value and be credible in doing so, because ultimately you always have more of a local advantage if you're really closer to your clients. So the closer you are to your clients, you always have a bit of an edge in determining the best solutions. But now all of our clients, and if you could be next door and people still aren't meeting in person, so the playing fields
Exactly.
become, the same. So it's like, even though, we may be sitting in one part of the planet, we're literally having the same conversations as everybody else remotely, and it's really trying to understand, what problems make sense in solving, and how can you build value, um, by properly configuring people.
Yeah, because there's a ton of problems still out there that software is a great tool to help solve those things. And the trick is, being able to see the signal through the noise, as you say, and just create value. What is it? The Jeff Bezos quote, you have to create more than you consume. I mean, that's really the secret there. So, that's really great. I want to move on a little bit to talk more about this kind of value building prospect, right? So, because one of the patterns that we see a lot of times in building a software product like what we have, this kind of digital experience platform, is that people it's almost acting a bit like a psychologist or a therapist for a lot of companies, because if you give them the right space and the right context, they will tell you all their problems, because people want their problems to be solved. And so, whether if you can boil it down to, a lot of times is, companies are looking to kind of turn their website or their digital channels, their apps and things, into these kind of automated sales machines. Like, they want to give people access to use their products or services, and all these businesses, they're really looking for this self-feeding cycle where everything can be automated. We can get into the specifics of, say, automating the onboarding, and really what they're looking for is a company like Mojo to give them something that's actionable, so that they can do something with it. So, in terms of what you think in large, and we could break it down by industry if you want, or we can speak very generally. But what do you think the trends are? Like, what do you think that these companies are looking for when they're trying to kind of automate and build value in general? Like, in other words, what's the good foundation of technology that they're looking for, or they should be looking for, in order to have that value generation? I think let's start with that.
Well, I think the first is to declare war on certain things. So for instance, you'll you're aware that, like, at Mojo, we want to simplify the digital experience for millions of customers. So we want things to be easy, we want things to be efficient. And so to do that, sounds great, but then you actually get to work and you have to break things down, because none of our clients and are small companies, and they're all big companies, and they all have, legacy software, and they have things that have been done a certain way, since, in some cases, the 1990s, right?
Right.
And so, one of the great challenges is to help, large companies prioritize really well. If they put the level of effort into improving things, what's going to be the business impact on,
Hmm.
that effort. And so it's really choosing the right battles, and then choosing the battles that are going to have the biggest impact, on the business and on the way that customers, can continue to love you. Um,
Right.
so really, this fanatical focus on the customer is always a great place to start, and to think through if there's a better way to add value to them, because the benefits, start to become massive the minute that people feel like there's lots of intelligence in the way that they're interacting with companies. And so that's been, one of the challenges that we've tried to solve with Mojo and everything we're doing is, how can we leverage our platform to really help our clients build fundamentally better digital experiences, better digital products that can continue to evolve over time. And this whole philosophy of you're never done, right? So you launch something, you learn, you see if you can improve it, you see if you can iterate on it, you see if you can get more value in the roadmap that you've created. And typically that a lot of that goes, about the way that you think about your digital transformation. So
Right.
we'll have customers that really take a project based approach to their digital transformation. Like we're going to start a project and end a project, and hey, we celebrate the project's launched and we move on. But
Right.
that's really not the case, right? So we really think about you launch a digital product and that digital product's born, and now you've got to improve and iterate and try to continue to add value to the business. And so
Right.
there's a lot of changes in thinking about how is it that you're going to convert, like you said, your digital channels into sales machines, into more efficient ways for clients and partners to interact with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we've been lucky because we have a lot of people in Mojo that have spent a lot of time
Oh
going
yeah.
from you know bad things to great things, and then trying to figure out along the way, how do you put into practice things that you learn across different industries? And we've been lucky to, spend a lot of time in the financial services industry where there's lots of critical things, lots of things that you can learn a lot from. And then now we're starting to extend that experience to a few other industries that we think we can add a lot of value. But the end objective at the end of the day is really trying to look at the world around you and see if there's important changes that are taking place, and then leverage technology to the as much as you can to build something better, do something different, so that customers love you, and spread the love.
That's
You're seeing that a
fantastic.
lot in
Yeah.
the fintech world right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So spreading love and just basically goes back to the thing. If you solve someone's need, they're gonna be loyal. They're gonna like you. And I really like this concept of because you talk about projects versus products, and I feel like you're echoing the Mick Kirsten book. I mean, we'll go over book recommendations later, but yeah, I think that is a core theme of what it means to go from kind of making good software to doing something really great. So it's cool to hear. So we were talking a little bit about the processes or things that the mindset. We're talking about maybe products, not projects, and kind of an outlook or what people should be looking for, really how they should be thinking. But so let's say that we've convinced someone, right? That someone really they understand the value of the leverage they can generate by adopting better technology in digital channels, and they're all in on the products and things. And so let's say that they realize that it can realize their business goals and their vision. So if they're all in, they say, hey Mark, you know what, I'm in. I think I know that this is the way to go. What would we tell them that like what are really the next steps there? In other words, what else can we leverage from something like a modern technology stack for the business? So in thinking of things like future proofing, because we often you'll work with someone where you build one thing with them, but then they start to realize, this happens all the time, they start to realize, wow, there's a lot more potential here, there's a lot more things. It depends on how they start out with you, because then they start to realize, hey, if I start to automate these things, I can really, when we work with larger clients, it's all about reducing complexity. Really, it's like, how can I simplify? So is there an established pattern, do you think, that like all companies are, they're kind of, once they start to invest, they start to realize, and then it kind of takes off from there? Or no, everyone, they always use things up to a point, and then there's still this kind of, there's a future somewhere where all of a sudden people's minds are going to really open up, and they're going to start to see the real value in platforms like this. You think of things like the way they develop products or headless CMS, stuff like that.
What you said, a couple things that are super interesting.
Hmm.
One is, future proofing. And the
Hmm.
second is reducing complexity.
Exactly.
So, if let's talk about future proofing for a second.
Sure.
So we're on the ninth version of Mojo's platform software. So 9 versions.
Yes.
And what's a point for us to be very proud of is that for the most part, all of our clients are either in the current version of Mojo or one version behind.
Hmm.
And that we've been around now for this is our 13th year, and we've been able to take our clients, along along our roadmap and continue to add value to them over time and to give them things that we think are very strategic in their digital channels and the way that they think about building digital products. And we've made, very important architectural changes along the way, to be able to help future proof and to be able to give our clients a competitive edge in how they want to go about building digital products. And, one of the reasons I think we've been so successful in, not keeping any clients behind is that we're we're always thinking about the scope. What's the scope of what we can do credibly, and what's the scope of what we can do better than everybody else? And so, what you'll tend to see is a lot of software companies that get too broad a scope makes it very hard for clients to continue to add value, and they start to suffer with a lot of legacy. And so, one of the things that we're doing now is that what we realized is that we need to spend some quality time educating our clients and educating our partners on the right software architectures. So, what's the architecture of reference that's going to allow them, to be prepared for building, great digital products in parallel, because everyone's doing a digital transformation right now.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's
It's
spending quite a bit of money, especially during the
exactly.
pandemic with all of the changes there. And we've had to really declare what our software architecture is going to be, where we're going to add value, and how are we going to bring together different systems in a way that everybody that has the right scope can essentially work together to build more value for the customer. And so future proofing for us is very much about determining what you can do well, what's strategic, what do clients value, and then what architecture is going to be there to integrate and play well with others. And so that goes to the second point you said, which I really like, which is reducing complexity, because ultimately you want to be able to break things down
Hmm.
into manageable pieces and manageable parts so that it can be maintained, it can be iterated. And so what Mojo has done, and we've talked a lot about this, is looking at, by declaring that Mojo is a front end platform, it really allows us to then think about, okay, well, how do we build out great customer experiences with the right scope that are easy to integrate, with other software, with different APIs. And so that's really, part of the whole equation is how can you create more predictability in the cadence of developing digital products in a way that um, is sustainable over time. And that's really, going deep into how software gets built in a company and how many people, what's the right team size, which teams are doing what. Um, and so there we're lucky to have a lot of experience seeing success and also seeing, you know, some failure in some of our clients, and in where places they've struggled with, either because they tried to go very big very fast, but they didn't have some things in place which ultimately became a real pain down the road.
Right. Yeah, it's something that's not an apparent problem right away, but then later it tends to rear its ugly head. That happens in software,
Yeah,
unfortunately, all the time. Yeah.
but one of the things I always love. There's this great concept from that we've talked a lot about at Mojo, which is shared understanding.
Hmm.
And shared understanding is very valuable because it's ultimately making sure that everybody's understanding and thinking through how this is going to play out. What are the key things that you want to achieve? Making sure that when you're going to go and declare that you're going to build a digital product, how are you going to build it? Who needs to be involved in it? Where does it fit in the portfolio of other things that we're doing? And are we consistent over time,
Right.
in making sure that what we're building is being analyzed as well in terms of its effectiveness and its impact in the different lines of business that you want to work with and you want to improve.
That's yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mark. I think that the concept of shared understanding, just kind of as a participant in this great Mojo experiment that's going on right now, is shared understanding has always been something that it's all about how well you understand a problem. I think it's because if you think about it, if you don't have that shared understanding, you can be a brilliant mind and you can really think of a great solution for something that you like, but the problem is if your understanding of the problem isn't correct, even if you come up with a great solution, you solve the wrong problem. You didn't solve the right problem. And so that's where, even if that there's a ton of different ways you can solve something, but it all starts from, like what you said, this shared understanding where everyone has to have a mutual kind of.
Yeah, and that's where this communication becomes critical, which
Mhm,
is
yeah.
getting people together from different parts of the business, making sure that the way that what one person understands is the same as another person, making sure that your engineering team and your product managers are great at getting this efficient way to over communicate so that everybody knows what they want to build and why they want to build it, and who's it for, and drilling down deep into your ideal customer profile as to who's going to use this, and all of those things become a challenge for every company, every organization, from small to large. When you're small, it's you've got fewer people and you might be starting cleaner, but when you're large, you've got people that may have decades of understanding about how things work, and along comes new people that are looking at things differently, and they're trying to understand how is it that we're going to transform these processes, and making
Right.
sure that that there's good communication and good discipline, I'd say, in what you prioritize, and the hypothesis that you want to try to test and work on to get done, and know that you're on the right track.
Exactly. I think that this is actually a really good transition to kind of this other part that you had mentioned you wanted to talk about, and actually worked into one of our questions that we had. And that's, for instance, when you're talking about bringing in new people or having this shared understanding, there's this concept. You, like you said, everyone's doing digital transformation. That's nothing new. But ultimately, digital transformation, we're in the business of technology and software, but it's really about the people. It's about the minds behind it and how they're thinking about problems, because software is just a hammer. It's just a tool, right? It's a very sophisticated hammer, but a hammer nonetheless. And so, with this concept that large companies have to manage all these channels, these applications, these websites, and they're all designed around certain objectives, right? They're really these, like we talked about, living, breathing things. It's a product that you have to go back and be constantly fixing, and they're responding to their respective markets, and they need to be constantly updated. And what this means is, okay, you have that, but all that means there's a ton of people behind that. There's developers, there's designers, there's engineers, there's QA professionals, there's a lot more, and they keep these things alive and adapting to the market. So let's talk about cultures and kind of teams here. So what, in your measure, are the key elements that can't fail in terms of culture and teams in order for these companies, and we can include ourselves in that because we certainly are, we're a microcosm of that, but really, what do they need to ensure in their culture and their teams in order to make sure that their products stay relevant and updated, and make them all the revenue that they're looking for?
Well, that's a great question. Let me try to break it down a little bit.
Okay.
Let's break it down and say, first, what's the vision? So, and then
Hmm.
you say, okay, the vision is X. And then you say, okay, well, in order for me to execute on that vision, and I love John Doerr's execution is everything, because
Yeah,
that's where
exactly.
things really, become interesting. And when you have people, it's really a challenge to align everybody so that they can execute well, execute with clarity, know that you're on the right track. And so then you start to get into different tools which are great. So you have like the Andy Grove and John Doerr, objectives and key results, that creates some more. At least there's a rhythm of analysis as to whether you're achieving or not achieving the objectives that you set. But then obviously, as you create multiple teams, in a larger company, really making sure that those teams have some type of very intelligent analysis as to what they're building. How does it fit into the equation? Um, are the product managers or the product leaders, communicating well between themselves? Um, is there alignment, for the things that need to get built? And then what's great, and when it comes to people, is you know teams are very powerful if you have the right people there. And so really looking at the skill sets of the people and allowing people to work together with the cadence, with focus, is obviously really important, because one of the great things that a product manager combined with a project manager needs to have is a good understanding of who their teams are and what they're capable of producing, and then making sure that each of those teams are understand where they're at. Where are they at different moments in time? Can they visualize where they're going to be? That's the other thing that's a big theme right now, that in Mojo is, okay, where do we want to be at the end of April? Where do we want to be at the end of May? And having this capacity to predict is something that you really want to strive for when you're building, teams, working with people that have to build something that has a degree of complexity, drilling down into all of the things that, all these dependencies that make people more productive or less productive. So it's a real challenge. And culture, if you look at culture in the mix, it's like, I love this radical transparency, a lot of pragmatism.
Mm-hmm.
You want consistency. You want to know that you thought through, what makes sense as an organization. Because there's nothing worse. Like I've had the privilege, to have worked with lots of different people over the past 25 years. And it's awful to be with leaders that are changing directions every month.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a new vision, that you have. That's really where, leadership's important. What you're not going to do is very important as to what you are going to do. So really getting the right scope, the right focus is critical for you to, execute. And but ultimately, you want a culture where everybody can raise their hand. You want a culture where there's a lot of smart people that are very pragmatic. If they see something that needs to be improved, they feel empowered that they can, take the initiative. And then hopefully there's coordination and communication, because you want to be consistent across the different things that you're doing. And so that's where, processes become important, putting the right processes in place, so that people aren't reinventing the wheel, every time.
Right.
And so that's why, we joke around about checklists and putting checklists together, so that you're able to automate and follow good procedures that ultimately make you more efficient. And so efficiency becomes the key in a culture. Is how efficient are you? How well did you think through the decisions that you've made? What data is there to support those decisions? Do you have the right people in the organization, to help you be more efficient and getting to where you need to be? And so those are always the challenges in a growing company, because obviously each company goes through phases, and we're at a fun phase right now where we're starting to scale, and we're adding more people, and we're getting a lot more acceptance for every part of our product, and we're getting great feedback. And so we're having to add new people to the mix, to the organization, and we're having to take people that were, say, in one part of the organization, and they were successful there, and now we're giving them opportunities to lead other parts of the organization. So culture really, at the end of the day, is incredibly important for you to succeed as a company, because there's only so much, that one person can do. So it's really about how a group of people are able to communicate, to set strategy, to see if the people that they're going to put in leadership positions are able to lead, um, and uh, and so that's why, you know at the end of the day, culture will be a determining factor in whether you're going to build a great company or not.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of things that we could touch on there and explore a little bit, because there's things kind of, unique to Mojo, or maybe, distinct, in the sense that talking about having someone be a leader in one area and then go off and go to, say, lead another area. Now, so anyone else looking at that, like a hiring manager, and could say, well, why don't we headhunt and find an external person to put in that leadership role, or why don't we promote from internally from that team? But it is a thing in Mojo that there's people that get success, and then they end up kind of like cross training or kind of doing both, and that is a pattern, I think, in whether you want to chalk it up to the way you envision structuring teams or the kind of cultural vision of the company. Why is it that's kind of that's a Mojo thing, where we want to kind of, it's nice to have, say, for instance, a technical person who demonstrates the ability to communicate well, to put them in a business meeting, to suddenly they're able to communicate things in a possibly more effective way, or maybe they can help restructure or help change the outlook of another team in a different way. So why is it that Mojo tends to work that way, and why do you think that's so effective?
Yeah, I think the answer to your question is that a lot of it's going to depend on, what the role is, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so but you always want to promote from within, as far as I'm concerned.
hmm
If you're investing in people, and you're trying to make people the best they can be, and you're trying to create experts, and you're investing your time to build an incredible, to build incredible professionals, you want to give them all of the opportunity in the world to grow, to take more leadership, to raise their hand. And then you have the advantage, having watched them, over a period of time, to know what
Yeah.
the probabilities are, right? Because when you hire somebody from outside, it's for all of the interviews that you have, and for, all of the references you may receive, it's a risk. You don't know, whether that person's really going to be, a high leverage person. So you say a high leverage person is someone who's able to create great teams, great, promote people, build knowledge, in those teams. And so, to the degree that you can promote from within, that's something that we're always going to do. As long as I'm leading the company, I think that it just makes intuitive sense that the people have put their sweat, you know, and all of their time into something, their passion, and if they've proven that they're capable, they deserve opportunities. Now, it I always laugh at, there's a great quote from Andy Grove's book, High Output Management, where the difference between abdication and delegation. So abdication is, you put someone in a position of authority and leadership, and you basically don't follow through and make sure that they're doing things and they have the support they need to be successful. That's abdication, because you've just basically you've given them an opportunity or a position where they can excel, but you haven't taken the time to make sure they're going to be successful in the role. And so that's where you want to really look at, okay, you've delegated, but are you there? Are you accompanying? Is there a period of time to make sure that that person's going to improve their chances of success in the role that they've been given, in the leadership position that they have? And that's something that, I think is the responsibility, obviously, of people that have the knowledge, that have done things before, that, can point people in the right direction. And ultimately, you want to put people that improve and do much better, than what was there before. Because you don't just want somebody, managing this exact same way without thinking through if there's ways for us to improve that part of the organization.
Right.
And
It goes back to the value adding argument from
yeah,
before,
and
looking
also,
at a larger scale.
yeah, and in our case, we're a software company. There's lots of complexity. Um, there's lots of opportunity. And so what we want to try to do is make sure that, everybody in Mojo that arrived to Mojo is hopefully finding a path where they can excel, where they can be successful, where they can learn, where they can become experts. So we have this big concept, as you know, on being an expert. And
Right.
what does it take to be an expert? And you could be an expert because you've got the technical knowledge, the technical know-how. You've proven that you really do understand what you're doing, and you've got your peers that are there to also validate that this person's ready and that they can take on a lot more responsibility. And that's been, I think, one of the reasons we've been successful is we've tried to make sure that we're building experts, and we're trying to make sure that there's really good knowledge sharing across the things that we've declared as very important as a company.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just speaking kind of outside of my interviewer role and just kind of an employee, I think that's definitely true. There's really opportunity, and yeah, it is very true what you say in terms of you have peer recognition, but then peer criticism, which is good. People can kind of see what you're doing and say, oh wait, here, let's take another look at this or something, and that ultimately is quite healthy. So, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of close things out here, because we want every episode we're picking the kind of brains of different thought leaders and things. And one of the easiest ways for our listeners to kind of not only maybe revisit the episodes, but then one of the easiest ways they can get into your mind is just by listening to your book recommendations. So we would like to get book recommendations. I believe we had Kelly before, and he recommended Drucker's Effective Executive. I think he did. So he's all about that book, man. So do
Yeah,
you have
well,
any other books that you'd
the
like to?
joy. So I'm reading this book right now, and so Callie, if you're listening, it's a classic, no questions. I'm just starting the book, actually. I'm in the first chapter,
Mhm.
but I would say that the best books, if I was to go across, sort of different um, business domains and technology domains, obviously, my favorite books were the Jim Collins books, like Built to Last and then Good to Great. Those are great, business books. If we go
Mhm.
more specifically into technology, I love Andy Grove's book, the classic High Output Management.
Yep.
Um, I love the John Doerr book, Measure What Matters. These are like great books. If I go into more, say, specific, you know, um, product management or designing products, I love Jeff Patton's book, which is user story mapping. I've read this
Mhm.
a couple of times because I think it's a great way for people to communicate and build that shared understanding. Um, if I was to keep going, um, I would say that this other book that sort of fits well with user story mapping is the Impact Mapping book. I can't remember the author, but it's one of the books that we promote at Mojo in
Yeah, we'll
trying
we'll
to
make
define what
sure
to build. Yeah,
we if we'll look up the
and
title and we'll put it in the video or something here, and so we'll let
yeah,
people know the author. Yeah.
and yeah, I'd say that what's great is that it's what I'm loving right now actually is because before I'm sort of the old school, I'm 50 years old, and so I was brought up, as a Generation X, and I was taught to read and read and read, and so I did a lot of reading. And now what I'm having fun with is sort of picking the right YouTube videos mixed in with the reading. And so I shared a YouTube video, um, this I think it was this morning with a bunch of people from Mojo that talked about, how to build your ideal customer profile, which was from the SaaStr event, and where Tom Tungus was one of the speakers, and then the video I shared actually had some great insights from people from Atlassian, people from Segment, and so this mix of like sort of trying to identify the right videos that become classics across the different business domains, is really really one of the cool things. I love it because it's what I was saying earlier. Is this democratization of knowledge is fantastic. I mean, it's really about trying to pick, what is it that you want to build, why do you want to build it, and then where can you get knowledge to help you better understand the business domain, better understand the value of what you want to create. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think if I look at my father's generation, it really wasn't as well. I mean, it was a different world. It was sort of the Mad Men second generation world, where it was, you didn't have access to all of these people and all of these different mediums and different literature to learn. So it's really, so great that anybody today can become an expert, with the right focus and the right discipline in what they want to be able to achieve. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a quote from recently introduced to this guy Naval Ravikant, who's he's like a tech investor, and he's very much of your thinking, where there's been this generational change in access to information, where he says something to the effect of there's not a lack of knowledge out there. What we're really in short supply of is the discipline and desire to become an expert, to become knowledgeable, because everything is there at your fingertips. I mean,
yeah, that's sort of the challenge, huh? Because you can get distracted very easily.
Oh,
and
yes.
I really, I have three daughters, right? And I feel a little bad for them because, in our generation, you could pretty much stay concentrated. There
More or
wasn't,
less,
you
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have a phone, you didn't have WhatsApp, it was much simpler. And today, one of the big challenges is trying to stay focused, stay disciplined, put your phone down, not look at every message, have this capacity to follow through. And that's something that's a skill, I think, more than
Right.
ever, is really trying to set direction, be able to go and finish things well, cute things, and where to put. There's like good distractions and bad distractions, obviously, right?
Yes.
So a good distraction, might be that someone sent you something that's very very useful for what you're doing. It's like hopefully what I sent this morning to our team is a good
Yeah.
distraction, because we're talking a lot about who are the people that should love Mojo the most. And
Hmm.
so, we're doing a lot of analysis right now on, our ideal customer profile and how we want them to use our product. And it's very valuable. And so hopefully they'll take what I sent to our team as a good distraction.
Right.
The bad distraction is, tons of messages, some more valuable than others, and you got to filter through it. And that's a challenge in itself.
Right. Well, I think that we can wrap things up there, because I hope that you found filming this is a good distraction. Right. It's been a good way to
This
kind
is a
of talk
great
about.
distraction, Wes. It's a great distraction,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, you
Hopefully
know,
everyone gets some value out of hearing us talk. And now I would love to maybe have you on for a future episode, or possibly we can open up a round table. I mean, there's a lot that we could keep talking about here.
yeah, well, the
So
good news is you got lots of people and lots of talent before you'll invite me back. So,
exactly,
so just keep
exactly.
going,
Yeah.
and let's try to get as much information that might be interesting out there, so people can thoughtfully consider, what we have to say and what we're doing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Mark, we really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else, Mark Bonnell, you want to say about Mojo or new initiatives or anything before we close things out?
No, no, I think we're good. I think it's going to be fun. I think we've got a great roadmap. I think we've been able to win amazing clients, got awesome partners. We're building out a great ecosystem, and feel free to openly contact me or anybody at Mojo, and hopefully you feel good about what we're doing, together.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. See ya.
Thanks, Wes.
Bye.